I'll be down home, but I go well, so.
Oops.
Can I ask Representative Porter to go off mute? I need to ask you a question.
I'm here, sir.
It looks like we have a replacement coming in today for,
Yes. Representative Pimentel, but there was some confusion whether he was coming first thing in the morning or for the afternoon executive session.
okay,
So he should be arriving sometime, hopefully this morning, but he didn't think he could get here by 8:30.
okay. When he does arrive, you can help me make sure that I notice everybody that he's just doing.
Okay. I also let
recordings are up and
Representative
running.
Ajuri know that too, so.
All right, we're all set, Chairman.
Thank you, Christina. And on those folders, it's HB 340 that is the early bill that needs to be sent in by noon, and so that's the one to be on the lookout for outside the room by 10 o'clock.
Okay, great. I have Brad coming down to pick it up around 10.
Okay, and I sent you an email to be able to print out the committee report.
Perfect, and I sent it to Heather, and so we're all good.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome. So you can go ahead with the script whenever you're ready.
Thank you.
Where'd you guys get the fancy pens? I'll get you. They might. What? They might, I'll get you. Campaign. Please.
That's right. You gave me one last year. And yeah, you can wipe off your glasses with this pen.
All right, let's get started. Good morning, everybody. This is the Municipal and County Government Committee in Concord on this 18th day of February 2021. As chair of the Municipal and County Government Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with House Rule 67 of the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. This is a public hearing on bills referred to the committee. An executive session may follow. Please note that there is no physical location for members of the public to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that all members of the committee and select legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during the meeting through the Zoom electronic meeting platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting by the Zoom platform or by telephone as well. All necessary access information has been made available in the House calendar and through the electronic calendar on the General Court website. The notice for this meeting complies with House rules and RSA 91A. Anyone who has a problem accessing the meeting should call 271-3600 or email hcs@leg.state.nh.us. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Christina Dyer is the staff member assisting us. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anybody in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. So ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Dolan,
Here, and I am actively at the State House. Thank you, Representative Piamati. Present. Clerk's here. Representative Tripp.
Present.
Yes. Representative Salas.
Here in the committee room.
Representative McBride.
Here.
Representative Melvin.
Here, LOB.
Representative Ayer.
Here, and I'm alone.
Representative Power.
I'm at my home office in Brookline and I'm alone in this room. However, there are family members elsewhere in the house.
Thank you. Representative Porter.
I'm here in my home in Hillsborough. I'm alone in the room, but my husband is home with me.
Representative Trailer.
I'm here in Dover, New Hampshire, on my own. Don't know where the cat is today.
Representative Gilman.
Good morning. I am in my home in Exeter. My husband is in the house and I have a plumber coming at some point, but I am alone.
Representative Majori.
I am here in my home office in Northampton surrounded by all my friends. So I'm alone.
Representative Davis. Representative Davis. She's not here. She's absent today. We have a substitute coming later. Okay, thank you. Representative Magapudi.
Good morning. I'm here at my home. I'm alone in my family room, but my husband is home today.
Thank you, Representative Fan.
I am at my house in Peterborough, New Hampshire, in my very messy workroom. I'm alone in this room, but my husband is somewhere.
Representative Clee.
Yes, I can hear the proceedings. I am home in Nashua, New Hampshire alone, but my husband and greyhounds are mulling about.
Okay, Representative Gallagher.
I'm here in my apartment in Concord, New Hampshire, and I'm alone.
Thank you, that's roll call. Just one. Thank you. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Okay. Good morning, everybody. We're going to take up as our first bill this morning a bill that's just been brought over to us from the Senate, Senate Bill 30. This is a bill that is actively being worked, and we are going to hear testimony, and then we're going to immediately exec the bill and send the paperwork over to the clerk, which has to be in process by noon today. That's why there's a rush on this particular bill. Like I said, we'll hear it and then we'll exec it. So to start with, Representative Maggiore, do we have Representative Forrester with us to introduce the bill?
I'm looking, I do not see the Honorable Jeannie Forrester listed in our attendees or as our panelist. I do see the prime sponsor, Senator Gaida, who is allowed to talk. If I'm wrong and there's a mistitling here, I'll certainly recognize the Honorable Senator Forrester. But I do see Senator Gaida, who I believe is the prime sponsor.
Let's start with the sponsor then, and if Ms. Forrester joins, just let me know.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the committee. For the record, Bob Gaida, State Senator, District 2, 27 towns, including Tilton, but not including Northfield. I was asked by the Honorable Senator Forrester, who's now the town administrator in Tilton, to bring this bill forward. It's relatively simple, and it takes the island in the Winnipesaukee River between the two towns, known as Tilton Island, also known as Island Park, and transfers ownership of that island to the town of Tilton. This is a collaborative effort between the two communities, has been endorsed and by the boards of selectmen, and also will be subject to a vote of the legislative body at this year's town meeting if we can get this through the legislative process prior to then. And for that, I'm grateful for your expediting of this bill. Again, it is a collaborative bill agreed upon by both communities. It will be voted on appropriately by the legislative bodies. I would be willing to take any questions, and I thank you for your help here.
Are there any questions from the committee for Senator Gaida? Yes, Representative Piamonte.
Yes, Senator. Thank you for taking my question. Thank you, Chair, for the answer. Are there any inhabitants on the island?
I'm sorry, I could not understand the question.
Are there any inhabitants on the island, as you know?
Not that I'm aware of. It's a rather small island, yeah. But I'm not certain of that. I think Senator Forrester would probably be able to address that more accurately.
Thank you.
Representative Lascelles?
Thank you for taking my question. I'm just wondering, why would you go to the trouble of doing this?
I think it's required by statute for the transfer of the property.
But why are you transferring the property?
It's the request of the community. The communities, plural, I should say, yeah.
Follow up?
I'm just wondering, why would, I mean, if it's an uninhabited island, why would anyone want to transfer from one town to another?
I would submit that the towns have probably got good reason for wanting to do it collaboratively, and I would suspect that those who may testify after me may offer a good reason for that. My job is to support the communities I represent, and that is the reason I am bringing this bill forward.
Thank you. Representative Gallagher?
Yeah, do you have a map to share with us showing this island? Is that in, did somebody send us written testimony or something with that? So I can see it visually.
I do not have a map, but I'm sure it's readily available on the internet as well as perhaps in possible subsequent testimony.
Okay, thanks.
Representative Maggiore, could you make me co-host?
I shall, yes.
Representative Majapudi?
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for taking my question. Does this change any responsibility in terms of maintenance or services? I know there is no inhabitants, but is there any maintenance required for this island that the transfer would happen?
Representative, I think those questions are best addressed to the folks who are coming behind me into subsequent testimony. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee for the senator? Seeing none, we have Representative Lang on the line. Representative Maggiore?
We do, and Representative Lang should be all set to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members. My name is Representative Tim Lang. I am the representative for San Britton and Tilton. I also have lived in Northfield and lived in Tilton and lived in San Britton as well. I can answer some of the questions that were coming up relative to the question, are there any inhabitants? The answer is no. It's about a 1 acre island in the middle of a river that has a gazebo on it that the town of Tilton regularly holds music events during the summer. There are weddings that occur on that island. The only access for this island is from the town of Tilton. There is no access from the town of San Britton. There's a bridge that goes over from Route 3 over the river and onto that island to give access. That bridge is maintained by the town of Tilton, but the island is coming into some disrepair, being that on the headwaters side of the island, the river as it runs by is eroding some of the island. Some repair work needs to be done to it. And then it becomes a conflict between the two towns, who owns the repair work and splitting of the repair work. The towns worked together and came up with a solution, and that is considering the access is mainly from the town of Tilton, and Tilton does a majority of the events on the island, that Northfield agreed to transfer ownership into the town of Tilton. However, this legislative action is required. There are no people live on it. But I think that answers all the ambiguous questions we had that were coming up around this. Again, this is a cooperative agreement. It's still subject to the voters of Tilton and Northfield on a ballot question. It's why I think it's being moved ahead really fast so we can get it on the ballot for March. And I'll happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions for Representative Lang? None. We'll go on to Representative Hill.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll allow Representative Hill to talk, which I've just done. I also see that we do have a map that was forwarded over by email, and hopefully I just emailed that to everybody on the committee. So look for that in your email. And Representative Hill should be all set.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Representative Greg Hill. I serve the towns of Northfield and 1/3 of the city of Franklin. I guess I'm here to concur with everything that Representative Lang and Senator Gaida mentioned earlier. We did have this agreement between Tilton and Northfield. I recall a few years ago in town meeting, taking a vote, and I think subsequently we found out that the correct procedure is to go through the legislature to change town boundaries. As I recall, the vote was unanimous in Northfield's town hall a few years ago to make this change. Northfield is not claiming any kind of desire to hang on to the property. It makes all the sense in the world for Tilton to remain the sole owner of this, or to become the sole owner of this. As Representative Lang said, that the only connection to the island is from Tilton. So it makes more sense to do this than anything else. And I'm also happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Representative Hill? Yes, Representative Mantipudi.
Thank you, Representative, for taking my question. Is this the first time this has been attempted, or is this subsequent attempts?
Thank you for your question. As far as I know, at least in the last 40 years that I've lived there, this is the first time it's been attempted. We actually were under the impression that all we needed to do was make a cooperative agreement between the towns. But I think when it got to the lawyer stage and the actual changing of boundaries, that's when it escalated to the having a legislative action take place. It really is nothing but if you would see the property, you would see that this makes a great deal of sense. It is by all intents and purposes a Tilton piece of property. But no, we have never attempted this before. We work very cooperatively with Tilton in a number of things. We share a fire department. We share a cooperative school district. It's a very odd relationship because Tilton is in a different county than Northfield. We cross a river, and sometimes that river is very deep and wide, and sometimes it barely exists. But it is an interesting piece for the history books, but it has not been attempted in the past, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
Follow-up, Mr. Chair, a quick follow-up.
Yes, go ahead, please.
It's between the two counties, not only it's two towns, but it's also two different counties, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that would complicate a little more, wouldn't it?
Thank you for your question. I think that's one of those for the lawyers to figure out. as far as we're concerned, the only thing that changes is the shape of the town and that boundary. I know coming to speak after me are some of the officials, at least one of the town officials from Northfield, Stephanie Giovannucci. I do not know if anyone from Tilton is available to answer that call. Perhaps the Honorable Jeannie Forrester.
Thank you. Next question is from Representative Tripp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question was answered by a previous question.
Okay, thank you. And Representative Trelevin, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Hill, for coming today. I've been able to pull up the map, and I very much appreciate that. I believe that is Stephanie, the town administrator, part of the town administration, who sent that. My question regards finances. You mentioned that the island needs some repair. I'm wondering if an admission fee or a use fee is charged to someone who might have a wedding in the gazebo or have a concert in the gazebo.
Yes, thank you for your question. Those finances have been handled, as far as I'm aware, although Stephanie would be able to answer it better. But as far as I'm aware, there is a charge for weddings. The concert series that takes place, I think that is handled a little differently, and I believe that's done through Tilton. I'm not certain of that, but I'm sure Stephanie could answer your question much better than I.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, I'm going to move on to the next speaker. Do we have Representative Harvey Bolia on the line?
We do, Mr. Chair, and should be all set to go.
I think we need to unmute her.
I just sent that request over.
Actually, you unmuted Representative Lang again.
Oh, whoops. Okay. I see Representative Harvey Bolia, but I do not, having a little trouble getting her to unmute here. I don't know, Mr. Chair, if you'd like to go over to Ms. Stephanie Giovannucci, who also requested to speak, but I don't see her on the list. I just don't see the Representative Harvey Bolia is unmuting yet.
We do that. Is the Honorable Jeannie Forrester on the line?
Not yet.
Okay, so let's go to Ms. Giovannucci.
I just pulled her up for you.
There she is. Okay, you can start, Ms. Giovannucci.
I'm clicking on mute. Oh, can you hear me now?
There you go. We can hear you.
There we go. All right. Thank you, everybody. I just wanted to answer a couple of your questions. You asked about the cost to rent the island. What we have in place is that you pay to rent the island, but you get that back if everything is cleaned up and there are no damages to the island or to the gazebo. So we don't keep that money. It is a town park. Also, we have the concerts, but like Representative Hill stated, the access is from the Tilton side. The island and half of the bridge is actually in the town of Northfield, which means that our police force is responsible to cover the island. And to make it easy for us and to make it easy for Tilton, we decided that the island would be best if it was all in Tilton, since the access is from the Tilton side. Also, the deed, when the island was given to us, states that it belongs to both Tilton and Northfield. And because of that deed, the only way, and the wording in the deed, the only way for us to do this, instead of just doing a simple deed, a new deed, would be to move the boundary lines according to our attorney. Because if we kept it in the town of Northfield, but still just gave the ownership to Tilton, our police force would still be responsible for policing the island without access from the Northfield side. It is in 2 different counties, and I believe our attorney is working on moving the county line as well. I believe he already got a letter from the Merrimack County and I believe the Belknap County that they are fine with it. And this has gone before the town meeting several times because we thought it was just going to be a quick little, here you go, here's the island. But we found that it was a little bit more complicated than that. So we have to go obviously back to the voters this year and ask for a final approval and hash it out for hopefully a final time. I don't know if I answered everybody's questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, Representative Mangiapudi. Thank you,
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Giovanni. Yeah, I have a neighbor, Ranucci, so that I was trying to figure that one out. So you made a statement about the rent, or it's more like a deposit, and if everything is cleaned up. What if it's not cleaned up, there's damage? Who's responsible for fixing, and who gets that money, to which town or county gets the money? And how is the Northfield police reimbursed or compensated for providing the protection as it exists today?
As it exists today is that Tilton gets the deposit. If there are damages, then we keep the deposit. And if it's above the $50 that we ask for, then Tilton usually leads the charge in attempting to get funding from the people who rented it. Our police force is not compensated for policing the island. It is part of our parks. It is a joint park, just like they would have to do at any of our other parks, monitoring it. So they're not compensated for policing the parks. It's not a special detail. It's just, they're just there in case of emergencies.
Okay, thank you. We have no other hands raised. Were we able to bring up Representative Harvey Bolia, or we still have a technical problem with her?
I've asked a couple of times, Mr. Chair, and unfortunately, it seems like we are having we're having a disconnect with getting unmuted.
Okay, and did we have an additional rep join the meeting?
We did. Representative, there he is, waving his hand. Pimentel, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Pimentel, thank you very much. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you for attending. You are attending on behalf of the minority for Representative Stavis.
My good friend, Representative Stavis. I sat next to her all of the last session, so sorry she's not here.
Oh, welcome. We're a friendly group. Okay, seeing no additional questions, at this point, I'm going to terminate the public hearing on Senate Bill 30 and move directly into executive session for this particular bill. Yes.
I'd like to make a motion on the pass.
Motion's been made, ought to pass. Is there a second?
Chairman, I'll second that.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, ask the clerk to take the roll.
Representative Blunt. Yes. Clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp.
Yes.
Representative Guthrie.
Yes. Aye.
Representative McBride.
Yes.
Representative Melvin.
Yes.
Representative Aya.
Yes.
Representative Power.
Yes.
Representative Porter.
Yes.
Representative Chair Lovett.
Yes.
Representative Gilman.
Yes.
Representative Majority.
Yes.
Representative Pimentel.
Yes.
Representative Megapudi.
Yes.
Representative Van.
Representative Van, you have to go off mute.
I was so proud of myself. Yes.
Representative Fleet
Yes.
and Representative Gallagher.
Yes.
And Chairman Nolan.
Yes.
Motion passes 19-0.
Okay, without objection, we'll place this on consent. Representative Piamonte, can I ask you to write the committee report?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. And that concludes the executive session for Senate Bill 30. Thank you all for participating that came. And thank you to the committee for expediting this particular piece of legislation. Next, we're going to take up HB 189, just as a notice to the public, we have already proceeded through that into executive session, and it was a vote of 18-0 to ITL it, inexpedient to legislate. Next is HB 243. Yes.
Asked to recess that, open the meeting, recess it. I would like to join two other bills with that.
That makes sense. We'll certainly make our process a little more concise. We'll recess the discussion on HB 243 so that the sponsor can move that into and perhaps consolidate it into other bills that are before us on a similar topic. Okay, next is HB 262, which will convene at 10 o'clock. So we were not going to start that one early, but let me see if we can fill some of that time up with some executive work and lessen our afternoon session.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
What are we doing with HB 243? I was looking for it and suddenly we're not dealing with it today. I was looking through my notes for it while you were talking. We're putting it aside for today?
Let me see. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we just, let's see. Yeah, we're gonna recess that bill to give the sponsor an opportunity to combine that bill with a couple of other bills so that, I believe there's gonna be an amendment that's gonna move 2 or 3 bills into one bill to make it more efficient.
Thank you.
The next is House Bill 262.
That's at 10 o'clock.
And so, like I said, we're not going to take up 262 early. I'm going to see if we have some time. We have 45 minutes until 10 o'clock. Let me see if we can buzz through some of the executive session and some other bills that we've planned for today. Yeah, let's take up HB. Let me say that we're going to move into executive session at this point while we're waiting for our next hearing at 10 o'clock. Let's take up an executive session, House Bill 64L, which was the bill about renewable energy that was introduced by Representative Aaron. We have a motion on Representative, on House Bill 64. From Representative Lascelles, or is it Representative Tripp?
I move to OTL, House Bill 64.
OTP?
OTP.
Okay. There's a motion to OTP House Bill 64 by Representative Lascelles. Is there a second?
I'd like to second that.
Okay, seconded by Representative Power. Is there discussion on the OTP recommendation? Yes, Representative Porter, you saw your hand sneak up there.
Yeah, I forgot how to raise my hand. Yes, I'm hoping that people will support us in this bill. It's important. I have constituents whose property tax bills will be affected by this error that DRA, this misconception of DRA, how to tax these facilities. So it would be helpful if we can get this solved before tax bill season comes around another year. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Representative Mangiaputi, yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's difficult for me to be quiet, so. My question is there a cap on what is the upper limit of generation facility, renewable generation? Is it still 1 megawatt, or is there a limit for this purposes?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't think it's particularly relevant to the issue that we're dealing with this bill. The renewable generating facilities follow the law. This just has to do with how they're assessed and which tax they pay.
True. A follow-up, Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, follow up.
Just because there could be larger, but they're not supplying to the local, but they can have a facility larger, like the Fritz Williams right now has 25 megawatt, but I don't know what their deal would be to do the tax.
Point of order from Representative Piemonte.
Yep. Representative Porter just answered that question, if I'm not mistaken.
Are you okay with that, Representative Mangiaputi?
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none. We're in executive session for HB 64. Do we have a motion? Rich? Representative
We've already
DeSalles?
had that.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have a motion in a second. I'm sorry. I lost my place. So I'd ask the clerk to call a roll on HB 64.
Okay, on to pass HB 64. Representative Monty?
Yeah.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp?
Yes.
Representative Guthrie?
Yes.
Representative Lascelles?
Yes.
Representative McBride?
Yes.
Representative Melvin?
Yes.
Representative Aya?
Yes.
Representative Power?
Yes.
Representative Porter?
Yes.
Representative Trelevin?
Yes.
Representative Gilman?
Yes.
Representative Majority?
Yes.
Representative Pimentel?
Yes.
Representative Max Booty?
Yes.
Representative Fan?
Yes.
Representative Clee?
Yes.
Representative Gallagher?
Yes.
And Chairman Miller.
Yes.
19-0.
Without objection, I'll place that on the consent calendar. Seeing no objection, we'll move on to executive session for House Bill 132. This was
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair, but I just want to let you know that the Honorable Jeannie Forrester has joined our meeting. I know we've already taken all that action, but she is there if you do want to have her speak in the downtime that we have between meetings.
Thank you. I'm sorry, but Ms. Forrester, we've already closed the hearing on that particular bill, and the bill passed to executive session at 19-0 to accept it. So, but thank you for appearing. So back to executive session on House Bill 132. As a reminder, this was the bill that dealt with acreage for single-family housing. And at this point, having observed quite a bit of confusion and concern about this bill, I am considering that this bill might be a candidate to retain for more study. Do I have a motion on that?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, is there a second to retain?
Yes, I'd like to second that.
Okay, seconded by Ms. Power. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'd like to ask the clerk to call a roll on retaining House Bill 132.
Yeah, HB 132, a roll call on retain. Representative Monty?
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp?
Yes.
Representative Guthrie?
Yes.
Representative Lascelles?
Yes.
Representative McBride?
Yes.
Representative Melvin?
Yes.
Representative Aya?
Yes.
Representative Power?
Yes.
Representative Porter?
Yes.
Representative Trello?
Yes.
Representative Gilman?
Yes.
Representative Majority?
Yes.
Representative Pimentel?
Yes.
Representative Cooney?
Yes.
Representative Van?
Yes.
Representative Clee?
Yes.
Representative Gallagher?
No, I think we should just pass it now.
No? Okay. And Chairman Goldman?
Yes.
18-1.
Okay, so that bill is retained, and John, if required, you write the report for that, why we retained it.
No
No.
report is needed for that. Chairman Dolan.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I have a question, Mr.
Yes,
Chair. Thank you. So it's niggling in the back of my head and I'm confused. I've only been a legislator for, I don't know, 4 terms now, 3 terms. The difference between what we did when we recessed a bill and when we retained a bill, I noted that we didn't vote on the recess. It was just decided, quote unquote. And now we've voted to retain a bill, which I understand means we're gonna work on it, possibly along with the sponsor. So the difference between the two, please?
Yes, it is within the authority of the chair to recess a bill at any time. And it doesn't need to come up for a vote. It's just really, we're doing this publicly to let those who may be dialed in to understand what happened and also make sure the committee knows. This recessing it just moves it out to give the sponsor or somebody to continue to work the bill, and it will come right back to us within a couple of meetings. Where retaining will push it out to give us time to work on it over the summer, and it'll come back to us early next year.
Thank you so much for the clarification. I feel smarter already.
Thanks for the question. Representative Flee?
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I'm sure you said it and I missed it. HB 64, is that going on consent?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes, there was. Okay, seeing no other questions? You have a question, John?
No, Mr. Chairman, you just put some documents that have to be turned in by 10.
Okay. All right, I'll take, I'm gonna go to another bill on executive session. This is HB 154, which was the revitalization of tax incentives. This is the last time this was in the Ways and Means Committee. It passed 20-0. And this seems to have a lot of bipartisan support, but it still needs to be voted on in our committee. So 154, if you want to take 30 seconds to pull up your data banks in your brain as to what we heard during the hearing on February 9th. At this point, I'll look to Representative McBride. Make a motion.
Motion ought to pass, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we have a motion about to pass the HB 154. Is there a second? And it's seconded by Representative Guthrie. Is there discussion on the committee?
I'd like to propose an amendment, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Who's that speaking?
Mr. Chairman, Everett McBride.
Yes.
I'd like to propose an amendment.
Okay.
And the amendment would be 2021-0344H.
Say it again.
2021-0344H.
That's a different bill.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That may be a different bill.
That's
Yeah, I'm sorry. Wrong one.
332.
Yep, that's right. You're right.
Okay,
My
so
mistake. My mistake.
would you like to withdraw that motion?
Yes, I would, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor to OTP HB 154 as presented. Then motioned by Representative McBride and seconded by Representative Guthrie. Are there any questions or discussion on the committee? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to take the roll.
Okay, ought to pass for HB 154. Representative Piamonte?
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp?
Yes.
Representative Guthrie?
Yes.
Representative Lascelles?
Yes.
Representative McBride,
Yes.
Representative Melvin,
Yes.
Representative Rhea,
Yes.
Representative Power,
Yes.
Representative Porter,
Yes.
Representative Trello,
Yes.
Representative Tillman,
Yes.
Representative Majority,
Yes.
Representative Tippett,
Yes.
Representative Mangaputi,
Yes.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Representative Clee,
Yes.
Representative Gallagher,
Yes.
and Chairman Dolan.
Yes.
19-0.
Chairman Dolan, if you would pardon the interruption, we have Mr. Paul Smith joining our meeting to provide, I believe, some clarity on the question that might have been asked by Representative Trelevin, and I wonder if you might recognize Mr. Smith to talk.
Okay, just a second. I'd ask on HB 132 for Representative McBride to write the committee report.
154, Mr. Chair, not 132.
Mr. Chair, are we in the voting mode right now?
Yes, we're
The motion's been made, but nobody's voted yet?
yes, everybody has voted, right?
Yes,
19-0
That
for
is 154, correct, Mr. Chair?
154. Did I say?
Yeah.
So Representative McBride, please write the report, the committee report for 154.
Okay, will do.
And Clerk Smith, welcome to our committee meeting. What can, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I received a question from Christina a few minutes ago regarding, and I apologize, I wasn't here to hear exactly the situation. But I believe that there was a question about whether or not a bill could be recessed for the year to be taken up next year. Obviously, the only way that would happen is if you all voted to retain a piece of legislation for action during the year, and then that would subsequently come to the floor in the second year of the session. But that is the only way that you could dispose of something. Additionally, I do want to address one other point, and this is actually Representative Piamonte. I left a message for you on your phone a little bit ago. There is a minority report that was filed with a motion of retain. Retain is not a motion that the House actually votes on. It is a committee motion only. So if you are writing a minority report, and even though you wish to retain something, you have to have a dispositive motion that goes to the floor. So I need either an ITL or an OTP or an OTPA, but retain is not a motion that goes to the floor.
Okay, so to the House Clerk, the issue that we had that perhaps Christina was questioning is that we recessed a bill for a couple of meetings to allow the sponsor to do some consolidation, but we did retain a bill to take up again next year. Those were the two actions that we took. I don't think there was any problem with either of those.
Okay, so when you're saying you're recessing a bill, you mean that you recess the executive session on the on that particular?
No, we recessed the hearing.
Okay, I understand. That's fine. As long as it's not an early bill that's due today, you're okay.
So
but I would note, if you recess the public hearing, you do need to schedule it for a time certain when you take it up again. So do try to have an idea on that so that we can get that in the calendar.
Our plan is to take it up on 3/1.
Okay, so yeah, as long as you can just communicate that with Heather, we'll make sure we can get that in the calendar for you today.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Any other questions from the committee? Yes, John.
On 154, you want that such valid that's assigned to the chair.
Yes, please. Okay, at this point, I'm going to take a recess for 15 minutes. We have some administrative work to do to get some of these bills moving. Some of them have to be out by noon today, so we're going to do that, and then we'll reconvene at 9:50. So if you need to take a break and get a drink, Representative Power.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask, we just took a vote on House Bill 154, and I don't recall placing that on the consent calendar.
Yes, it is on the consent calendar. Okay, and let me go back because I wasn't asked, but I want to let you know that on House Bill 30, we had on the blue sheet 9 people supporting and 0 opposed. And on, let's see.
We got 154 last time, Mr. Chair. Support 18, oppose 0, neutral 0.
Right. And on 189, that one is, like I said, already done. So any others that I didn't give you input on?
Can you just repeat SB 30, please? I didn't write it down.
Senate Bill 30, support 9, oppose 0. Okay, so we're in recess until 9:50. Thank you very much.
Rich, I'm gonna write the blurb for 64. I know there's some confusion. If not, I'll do it.
Yeah, who's writing the 64?
We're discussing that right now.
If you want to.
I'll write the blurb for 64. I'll email it to you tonight. Or does it have to be done today?
No, tonight.
Okay, good. So you were in the Navy for 10 years? I was only in for 8 years, 3 months, 22 days.
Don't keep track, right?
Well, because I'm one of the few people I know that has a RE4 reenlistment. It says not recommended for retention or reenlistment. What? You don't have, you,
Is that right?
yes. This, me and my chief didn't get along.
I was in for the decade of the 70s.
So, you had an honorable discharge, so take you a long time. Good. Me too.
The Enterprise.
Enterprise. That was nuclear power. You know what's nice about that? Never had to be refueled. You know what's bad about that?
Never had to be refueled. The reactors on that subs during my era would last about maybe 4 years.
Yeah.
Then they had to be refueled. Subs today, reactors last like 30 years.
Yeah. Well, I think the Enterprise had to be refueled once. And it was 50, 60 years. You need some help breathing. Yeah.
They are.
Good vitamin C. Good chance we might have the afternoon off.
Sweet.
What'd you do?
I was aviation electronics technician.
No. Sorry, that's okay.
I was ballistic fire patrol, which Navy parlance was missile direction, basically. I served in the Missile Control Center, which was a wonderful place to work. Made 5 patrols. Goldilocks Scotland. Where were you based?
I was actually in a A7 squadron. We were out of Lemoore, California, in the San Joaquin Valley. It's like Mountain Home, Idaho. No, it's what was I used to say? It's in nowhere, but it's right in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. Yeah. But I made 2 Vietnam cruises. No.
Phantom jets.
We had 2 Phantom squadrons on the first cruise. 2 A7 squadrons, 1 A6 squadron. And, you know, yeah, a couple other support aircraft.
How far off the coast were you?
But that wasn't my job, wasn't my concern. No. I learned a long time ago, if it's not my pub, don't make it my pub. You know?
My uncle was probably in your job in World War II.
Yeah.
He was a B-29 instrument technician.
Yeah.
So he was based on Tinian. Saw the Enola Gay being loaded with the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
1945.
No, we, what was it? The second cruise. Our imports were usually Subic Bay, Subic Bay, Subic Bay, Subic Bay. you know, Civic Bay, Hong Kong, Civic Bay, Civic Bay, Civic Bay, Singapore. You know. And my second cruise, we finally, we were going to go to Manila.
Well, that's Subic Bay, right?
No, Subic Bay is around the other side of the island.
But it's the Philippines.
That's the Philippines. Yeah. So we pulled into Manila, we dropped the anchor, and then, you know, usually they take up a couple of links to set the anchor. Well, they kept pulling it up, and you know, we're sitting there going, something's wrong. Well, it was April 30th, 1975, which was when the North Vietnamese were making the run on Saigon. And the captain comes over to one to see. And he says, boys, you want to see Manila? Run topside. We're going back. Yeah, I was in the Vietnam both times the war ended. The war ended in
All my stuff, Tom, is insured in
February of '73 with the
It's already been taken care of.
peace treaty. And then it really ended in April of '75 when Saigon got overrun. You know?
Did you get the email from Bill Marsh?
Yeah.
I like that better, don't you?
What?
I'm just saying if this one article should be amended to change, will not be amended, so shall we amend it to change its
Specific
intent?
The what?
Intent.
Yeah, well, I made another slight tweak to it. There's a specific intent, you know, and driving up here today, I'm thinking, you know,
So you went up paying the
if you look at RSA 40,
No, I can't. I drive right past it. Go to my.
Yeah.
they
Did it fine over there when we read it? I heard it really leveled it pretty well.
I remember there is anyhow.
Millions of dollars for boats that are stored in the park.
Yeah.
Shrink wraps. Boats.
You're still working on that anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I see, like one, we were going to insert the change after C. But, you know, like I said in my email, the only thing that's actually prohibited right now is changing the subject matter. So I was thinking that maybe we would make another slight tweak to change and say the we would say right.
Mr. Chairman, I saw your shirt last night. Did you go to the academy?
I did.
I have a nephew who is an assistant basketball coach for the Army basketball team.
And I was thinking that we would maybe put the subject matter.
Not this year, but we have.
Yeah, it's a beautiful.
Make it a little stronger.
Saw the Army Navy game.
I haven't.
Not this last year, but the year
I haven't
before.
Football game?
No,
proposed that change other than to you.
but even that, you know, it's such an inspiration.
Figure out-
I mean, all the guys are just top notch, and you know, they fight like hell on the basketball court, but you know they're all on the same side. You know.
I think also
I'm
in the context of this change.
I'm going to tweak that a little bit more. I don't think it doesn't have to be done today, right?
No, no, oh, no.
There
Oh,
is
I don't know, I
certain
just wanted to pick up this.
Yeah,
and,
I got it, and
certainly it's the place.
and I thought
Find for this.
that's good,
Yes.
but maybe we can make it a little stronger.
Solid.
I'm not happy with it.
that whole
that
subject area.
intent.
We stayed at that hotel, that old castle type,
Sometimes they
Yeah.
happen, they.
with the train that went by.
Yeah,
The
train
problem
was
you
on- was on
have
a tunnel right-
is,
right by there, right. Used to be
defining
years ago,
intent.
that's how the cadets.
Yeah.
No, so,
went
uh,
and went to and left
but the
from
intent
that,
should
most
be
of them did by train.
Oh, really?
like the
That's, you know,
introduction.
people weren't flying
of the
much back then.
Yeah.
You know,
And driving.
I didn't
If
print
you
it all
were from
out.
Colorado, for example, you basically took the train.
say, well,
That's how they came with it. You
try
know,
and make it a
we
little
don't have a lot of
Yeah, I don't think it
trains
does.
anymore.
I'm happy with that.
Was, that was quite a motor transportation, and the tunnel opens up and the train comes out right by the south dock at the academy, and that's a beautiful train station.
Does it still stop?
Yes.
We didn't actually see the station, but I heard that train so many times.
Yeah.
Because it seems to run all the time.
Yeah, it's an active train. It is used, not as much as it used to be.
What year did you graduate?
Back in '78, back in prehistoric times.
Were you in for,
I was only active duty after graduation for another 5 years, and then reserve for a few more years after that.
I got out of the Navy after 10 years in 1979.
Oh, okay.
what day?
It was like the end of June,
Oh, I got up January 9th.
79.
Yep. See, I was one of the lucky ones. I won the birthday lottery.
Oh. Did you have a number?
Yes, I did. We were in college and we had a pool. Whoever won had the lowest number, got the pool. But I won in that I had a low number, but I didn't have the lowest.
Can you, Rich, can you rebuild the door? Ask Tony to please, or
Who?
Tony?
Oh.
Please.
Yeah, you talk to people now about the draft lottery and they go, what? What's the draft?
Oh, you here?
How much did you have to pay to play?
To win. They never got me.
Really?
I was coming up, they were taking, the single guys I get married.
Oh.
Then they said, you taking married guys, I had a baby. They said that I had another baby. I always said I screwed them out of.
Were you born in '29?
Yeah.
Same year as my dad. He was born in September of '29.
November.
And you were too. It was
Yeah.
a little too young for World War II.
Yeah, I was like in the middle.
Yeah, he was like 16.
Yeah. I had friends that went into Korea. Someone came back. I had a good friend that came back. Came back.
Sorry about that.
He almost lost his job.
I didn't hear you, and then I heard.
Quitting his job, he co-clocked his boss. Well, he just jumped.
Okay, let's get started back up again. Okay, we're still in executive session. Representative Mangio, you look like you're alert and awake, so we're ready to go in executive session.
That's a cardboard cutout of me.
Thank you for placing that in front of the camera. Okay, so at this point, we're going to entertain a motion to reconsider. Call on Representative Piamonte for that motion.
I make a motion to reconsider House Bill 183.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Wait, what?
Motion to reconsider House Bill 183.
Who's that?
Need stand, Bill? Seeing no discussion or request discussion,
Mr. Chair, I'm a little confused. Can you just go over what we just did?
Yes. House Bill 183, it's just been a motion just made to reconsider that bill.
183?
Why are we
That was lemonade, right?
Bill.
Mr. Chair,
So, I don't see your hand up.
Marjorie Porter.
Oh, Representative Porter, yes.
can we reconsider a bill that we've already execed in committee?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Order. I would ask the,
Mr. Chair?
yes, Representative Vance.
Thanks. Can you remind me what the vote was on 183 when we voted on it last week?
11 to 9.
That's
11 to 9.
ITL.
I have 11 to 7 ITL.
yeah, that's what I have.
8 to
Yeah,
10.
I'm sorry, 11 to 7, yeah. 11 to 9 is more committee members than we have.
And I ought to pass with amendment that failed, 8 to 10.
So follow-up question, Mr. Chair?
Follow-up question, go ahead.
Why are we reconsidering this bill?
Because a representative, committee representative has made a motion to reconsider.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Gilman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if the representative that made the motion to reconsider was from the prevailing side of the question. I'm sorry, say that again?
Yeah, motion was made by Representative Piamonte. You have a question about that?
When we're doing motions to reconsider, doesn't the person making the motion have to have been in the prevailing side of the vote? I'm just questioning if he was.
Thinking about is if we're on the House floor in the Hall of Representatives, then that rule does play in effect. It doesn't at the committee level.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I just want to reclarify, isn't that the same on committee also? Whatever is the rule for the floor, is it a different for reconsideration? I haven't experienced anything like this. This is my 5th term. So I just want to be doubly sure that it's the same rule or different. Thank you.
Point of order, Representative Piamonte?
Yeah, Representative Mazzucati did not recognize the chair. She just jumped right in and started talking.
Okay, so I would ask the committee to try not to take advantage of my good nature and raise your hand and wait to be recognized so that we can proceed per our committee rules. Representative Mazzucati, please re-ask your question because I didn't.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for the reconsideration or any rules. It's the same rule in terms of, we just had the clerk clarify for retaining on the floor or in the committee. Isn't the same thing to reconsider? Doesn't it have to be from the prevailing side to be reconsidered? I just want that clarification one more time, because this is my 5th term and I'm trying to understand what the rules are for committee meetings and the floor. So what's the difference and why on one, on the floor, it has to be prevailing side, and on the committee, it's not.
And another point of order.
Yeah, that question was asked and answered.
Maybe with some of the crosstalk, the answer wasn't heard. In the Hall of Representatives, you're absolutely right. That's the rule that prevails. However, if the bill is still in committee, either side can request reconsideration. It doesn't follow the same. I confirm that. clerk of. Is that any follow-up?
I am confused, but that's, I will.
Chairman Dolan, would you allow me to answer?
Sure.
Okay, so either side can request the reconsideration. However, the committee does need to vote on the reconsideration motion. If it passes, then you go back to a new motion.
Right, that's my understanding as well. Representative Porter, do you have something to add or a question?
No, I just looked up, I wrote the committee report for this bill and the final vote was 11-7 to ITL the bill.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Correct. Okay, seeing no additional questions, we have a motion on the floor to reconsider HB 183. I ask the clerk to take the roll on that question alone, just to reconsider whether you're in favor or not in favor to reconsider.
Okay, I motion to reconsider HB 183. Representative Piedmonte,
Yes.
clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp,
Yes.
Representative Guthrie,
Yes.
Representative Lascelles,
Yes.
Representative McBride,
Yes.
Representative Melvin,
Yes.
Representative Ayer,
Yes.
Representative Howard,
Yes.
Representative Porter,
No,
Representative Gilbert,
No.
Representative Gilbert,
No,
Representative Majority,
No.
Representative Pimentel,
No.
Representative Megapudi,
No.
Representative Van,
No,
Representative Clee,
No,
Representative Gallagher,
No.
Chairman Noel.
Yes.
10-9, motion passes.
Okay, at this point, there is an amendment to this bill, so we need a motion to either OTP
Joe.
or
What was the vote?
ITL. Yes, Representative Piedmonte.
I make the motion, we amend the House Bill 183, and the amendment is 2021-0092H.
Okay, the motion is to pass the amendment as presented. Any questions on the amendment? Yes, Representative Porter?
yes, Mr. Chair, is that the same amendment we got before or is that a new amendment?
No, that's the same amendment we voted on last time, but we just have to kind of run it through again.
Thank you.
Amendment number?
Amendment number is 2021-0092H. Thank you. Is intended.
Okay, so I ask the clerk to call a roll on.
We need a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have a second on the.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to take a vote now on yea or nay on the amendment. And then, depending how that goes, we'll entertain another motion. So I'd ask the clerk to take a roll on the amendment.
Okay, amendment 0092H. Representative Piedmonte,
Yes.
clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp,
Yes.
Representative Guthrie,
Yes.
Representative Lascelles,
Yes.
Representative McBride,
Yes.
Representative Melvin,
Yes.
Representative Ayer,
Yes.
Representative Howard,
Yes.
Representative Porter,
No,
Representative Gilbert,
No.
thank you.
Representative Gilman,
No.
Representative Majority,
No.
Representative Pimentel,
No.
Representative Megapudi,
No.
Representative Van,
No.
Representative Clee,
No.
Representative Gallagher,
No.
and Chairman Noel. Yes. Motion passes 10-9. Okay, at this point, I'd look for a motion to OTP as amended.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I make a motion for House Bill 183, to pass as amended,
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Representative Marcellus, seconds. Is there any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, ask the clerk to take a roll for OTP.
My hand is up, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Yes, Representative Porter.
Disappointed in this action. This is a foolish bill that gets nobody anywhere. And the last time, 11 of us agreed that it was not worth passing. I'm sorry that this has happened.
Okay, thank you. Representative Maggiore.
I'll echo what Representative Porter said and throw in my I guess it's confusion. We voted against an amendment last time. We have the exact same amendment. There have been no changes. It has now passed. And I expect that this bill is now going to pass on a 10-9 vote. I'm just confused and want to make sure that I express my confusion.
I have it in my notes that the amendment passed last time 18-0.
You're right. I'm sorry. I was looking at a different note. I apologize.
Okay, no problem. Representative Megapudi.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo my previous speakers, and I'm still confused. It was 11-7. Yes, the amendment passed, but OTP as amended failed, and ITL 11-7. And to change the will of the committee again. So I'm just asking if this would be something that I need to look forward to in terms of the bills that pass to be reconsidered.
Okay, Representative Marcellus.
Yes, for my own sake, I believe I voted against this bill the last time, but I, in the meantime, have had significant time to think about it. And I had a couple of different nights, had a dream about wonderful lemonade. So that's the reason for my change of vote.
Representative Pimentel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this amended version, is that what comes up on the legislative website? Because I haven't actually seen the amendment that I know of. And if it's not what's on the website, can somebody explain to me what the amended version is? Or
Yes.
possibly email?
I can explain it to you. All members of the committee except you received copies of the amendment. I'm sorry, I didn't know who was the substitute prior to the start. But I can summarize the amendment pretty quick in this particular case. The bill talks about lemonade stands. And the amendment just changes the word from lemonade stand to soft drink stand. So it doesn't exclusively mention lemonade. It just talks about all soft drinks. Okay, we have a hand up from Representative Clee. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not confused by what happened here. I am disappointed, and I do respect those who've had a change of heart. after we have voted. We all do at times, and I think on the floor is probably where we should change our heart rather than to continue to do this in committee. So that's why I am truly disappointed. One of the notes that I had written when we discussed this was possible of unintended consequences, and if it ain't broke, why fix it? One of the comments that was made was that it's never happened in this state, and it's been 10 years, I think, since it happened in Texas. So I guess I understand wanting to support the people who brought this forward. It's an admirable attempt and so on, but I'm disappointed at what the committee is doing today. So thank you for hearing me.
Welcome. I can tell you that I knew this was potentially coming, so to educate myself, I went to the House Clerk and inquired exactly what were the rules around committee reconsideration. So I am up to speed on that, and what we are doing is per House rules. Reconsideration is demonstrably different when it's in the Hall of Representatives. There are different rules that apply. So those of you who may be a little confused, I spoke directly with Paul Smith about this. You're welcome to do that similar investigation if you'd like to do your own investigation. But I can tell you with confidence that what we are in the process of doing is acceptable. Although it may be disappointing for some of you, process that we're using is per house. Representative Gilman, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to echo some of my fellow representatives, just in that I voted for the amendment because it made sense to change lemonade to include all soft drinks. We had a lengthy conversation about that. But towns still have the authority to license and regulate all of these things that happen on sidewalks. And they can make the choice of whether to charge for it or not, where to put them. They have health officers to look at safety. So I find that this is an unnecessary bill.
Thank you, Representative Gilman. Are there any final questions or concerns prior to taking the vote? Okay, we are in the voting mode. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Municipal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is really a slippery slope bill. I mean, all of a sudden you're not having permits being required for lemonade stands. They start selling their Girl Scout cookies, and then they start selling French fries and whatever. I just think that it's, this should be left up to the town. Why should we as a state mandate what is going to be done at the local level? This is not worth our time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, seeing no further questions, I ask the clerk to take a roll on OTP as amended.
Okay, OTP amendment bill number 1 and 3. Representative Piamonte?
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp?
Yes.
Representative Guthrie?
Yes.
Representative Gonzalez?
Yes.
Representative McBride?
Yes.
Representative Melvin?
Yes.
Representative Vega?
Yes.
Representative Power?
Yes.
Representative Porter?
No.
Representative Sheila?
No.
Representative Gilman?
No.
Representative Missouri?
No.
Representative Pimentel?
No.
Representative Magafuni?
No.
Representative Van?
No.
Representative Clee?
No.
Representative Gallagher?
No.
Jim McDowell?
Yes.
Motion passes 10-9. Did anybody do it?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Representative Porter.
there will be a minority report and it will be the same as the majority report that I sent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a volunteer to write the majority. Representative Diamante will write the majority. Okay. We're now back to our regular scheduled program. We are looking to hear
$262.
Okay, so we're gonna next have our hearing on HB 262. I thought we no?
This is a new bill.
Right. All right, so we're going to open up our hearing on the bill 262, and is Representative Najuri, is Representative Yokella on the line to introduce it?
Representative Yokella is on the line and able to speak. Welcome, Representative Yokella.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am here today to introduce HB 262 relative to the adoption of bylaws and ordinances by municipalities. This legislation just seeks to have each bylaw and ordinance state the RSA section that enables that municipality to enact the ordinance or bylaw, and only new or amended bylaws would be affected. So this does not require them to go back to the previous ones, but only new ones. And I think that this is important for the legislature to know how their empowering RSAs are being used at the local level, so that it will inform us to adjust or make better laws in the future. I think that residents of those municipalities oftentimes are confused as to what powers are given and how they are to be remedied if they don't believe the municipality has that power. And some examples may be the power of, some municipality to raise the smoking age, or limiting speech in a particular area of town, et cetera, et cetera. And so they might question how the municipality believed that they were empowered to do so, and help them prepare a legal remedy if they believe that that is necessary. Instead of right now, they would have to go to court to even find out where the defense is coming from. And so that if they knew ahead of time, they might be asking the legislature to change it instead of going to the courts, and may reduce the possibility of legislation that is, or the possibility of lawsuits that really should be addressed by the House and Senate, and not by our courts, clogging up our courts. Also, municipalities should be advised on their law before they issue the regulation. So I don't believe that this is going to cause additional legwork by the municipalities. And I'm thank you for consideration of this bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? I see Representative Ford, you had a question?
Mr. Chair, I forgot to put my hand down before.
Okay, so let me ask you, do we have Mr. Cordell from the NHMA online to testify?
We do, Mr. Chair, and he should be good to speak.
Okay, go right ahead.
Or at least there he goes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cordell Johnston, representing the New Hampshire Municipal Association. I have sent a letter to the committee expressing the Municipal Association's opposition to the bill. And as I said in the letter, it certainly is a good practice for a municipality to cite the enabling statute when it is enacting a bylaw or an ordinance. But not everything that's a good idea should be mandated. And we are concerned about what the consequences would be. As I said in the letter, there's any number of situations that could result in the failure to cite the enabling statute when an ordinance is adopted. It could be a simple mistake. It could be an accident that occurs at any number of different steps in the process. And if the municipality fails to cite the enabling statute, what is the consequence? It seems like for the requirement to make any sense, there has to be a remedy, and presumably the remedy would be that the ordinance becomes invalid. And that would cause serious problems. Again, selectmen, city councilors, aldermen are not legal experts, and they do not always necessarily know the exact statute that enables what they're doing. They do their best, but if they make a mistake, that should not result in the invalidation of an entire ordinance. I mentioned in my letter one thing that happened when I was a selectman and we were reviewing our investment policy, which the town is required to have under RSA 41.9. I looked at the policy and it cited RSA 209. I looked up RSA 209 to see what it was, and it's a statute that regulates hunting of game birds and prohibits the taking of homing pigeons. Obviously had nothing to do with investment policy, but arguably if this bill had been in place, our investment policy would have been invalid because it cited the wrong statute. So I just think, as I said, certainly it's a good practice to cite the statute when you adopt an ordinance, but to make it a requirement, I think will cause serious problems. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Cordell or for Representative Pella? We'll take it those folks first. Representative Mangiuri.
I think Representative Mangiapudi and Klee were both before me, and even if they weren't, I defer to either one of them.
Okay, Representative Mangiapudi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question, Mr. Cordell. How does this change, or does this change the whole RSA in interpretation and shift it to local and create more confusion?
I'm not sure I entirely understand the question.
Okay, let me clarify.
Okay.
This change, relative to adoption of bylaws and ordinance by municipalities. So this would mean that local municipalities can change or adopt, right? So wouldn't this create more confusion? How many municipalities do we have? 283 in the state?
234 to be exact. And yes, I think it would create a lot of confusion. it wouldn't affect a municipality's ability to adopt an ordinance, but it would create problems if they, as I said, if they make even a minor mistake in adopting it, if they forget to cite the statute or if they cite the wrong statute. I think that creates a lot of confusion.
Follow up, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please, go ahead.
So would this create more legal challenges for municipalities, or would it reduce the legal challenges?
Oh, I think it would create more legal challenges if my town adopts an ordinance that I don't like. Currently, if I want to challenge it, I have to find some reason, like, this isn't authorized, it's unconstitutional, or something like that. But under this, if the selectmen simply forget to write down the statutory citation, I can say, aha, you didn't do this, the ordinance is invalid.
Thank you.
Representative Treleaven?
Representative Klee and Representative Maggiore were ahead of me. So Representative Klee, I defer to you.
Okay, that's where you want to do it. Representative Klee, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Representative, and thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm not quite sure who this question should go to. It probably should go to Representative Yokella. The question that I have is in Nashua, when we create signage, we almost always cite the ordinance. We also often will cite the RSA. If the RSA were to change, which they often do, we would have to replace the signage and so on. And I would recommend that we do that, but it can be costly if we don't do it on a timely manner. And my concern is just that if we have the wrong RSA cited, this could leave us open to lawsuits. Is that an exception to the rule? And I guess I put that to Representative Yokella.
Thank you for the question. This statute or this change in law does not contemplate the change of a statute. And so if they enact the RSA that enables it at a specific point, there is no method for going back and saying, okay, now the RSA has changed, let's enact another statute or another ordinance or bylaw that amends it. That amendment would need to state the new RSA, but I think it would be inappropriate to say that the bylaw and ordinance would automatically become invalid at the time of the RSA change. I think that it would be, when you're citing RSAs, it's possible to just say that it's, as of blah, blah, blah date, and you would be able to look up that statute and see where that power is. And if it gets repealed, if that power is repealed, then obviously it will and it will affect the ordinance or bylaw. But if it just moves sections, I think that it will not invalidate the bylaw. But I think that that is something that could be addressed by an amendment. Thank you. To make it more clear, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative.
Representative Treleaven?
Once again, I don't mean to be rude, Mr. Chair, but Representative Maggiore had his hand up before I did, so I'll defer to him.
That's okay. I'm calling on you next, so go ahead.
I'll go real quick. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I believe my question will be for Cordell, but I certainly welcome the input from Representative Yokella. Can a state statute have a hold harmless clause in it?
A hold harmless clause.
Do I need to? So my concern, Cordell, is exactly yours. I'm the chair of my select board. I take great pride in and pleasure in reviewing statutes when we're going through something. What happens if I make a mistake? Can this statute say, you know, something to your concern? Failure to cite the proper statute shall, a hold harmless clause in case I screw up, because I actually have screwed up before, 12 times in the last 12 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could put in a provision saying that the failure to cite the statute shall not cause the ordinance or bylaw to be invalid or ineffective. But if you do that, you're saying that it doesn't have any consequence. And if it doesn't have any consequence, then what's the purpose? What's the point of enacting the requirement in the first place? So,
thank you.
Either you can have something with no consequence or something with bad consequences.
Thank you.
Thank you. Regardless of what order people's hands were up, I'm going to go to Representative Treleaven next.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. And I promise not to impose on your generosity. I think my question, well, once upon a time, I was a preschool teacher. And we had this great book that we used with our kids that helped them with fine motor coordination and eye hand, and it was called Work Jobs. This bill strikes me as a make work job bill, in the sense that those of us who are involved with making laws, local officials, enforcing laws, legislators in our Senate and House, and we know how laws are created in our state. This strikes me as, I can't think of the correct word, unnecessary, usury to the users, and creating work where work doesn't need to be done. We know how bylaws and ordinances are affected in towns, and we know how they can be created. We don't need to add this mandate on top of it. Sorry, that wasn't a question, it was a statement.
I'd be happy to treat it as a question and answer it.
Please do.
You want to reform your statement in the form of a question?
So what do you think, Cordell?
I appreciate the question, and I sort of agree. I don't entirely agree. I mean, as I said, I do think that the exercise of citing the statute when you enact a bylaw or an ordinance is a good one. If every time the town, the selectmen, the aldermen, whoever adopt an ordinance, they would look at each other and say, what statute allows us to do this? Let's figure that out and let's write it down. I think that would be a good thing, because they do need to understand that you can only adopt an ordinance if it's authorized by state law. So I do think it's a good thing to go through that exercise, but I agree with you that it's a bad thing to mandate it, because if they fail to do it and there's a state statute that says you have to do it, then the failure is going to result in someone challenging the ordinance, and that's a real problem.
Thank you. Next, Representative Thielman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Representative Yokella, and thank you for taking my question. Will this exercise involve someone at a municipality in the administration level reviewing every year what RSA has changed, and does it affect our policies? And does it add to somebody's duties?
Thank you for the question. I alluded to before, if it was the will of the committee, that their concern was that, an RSA change would require an amendment to a bylaw and ordinance. I'm happy to draft an amendment that states that the RSA would essentially follow the bill, the bylaw or ordinance, so that they wouldn't need to reenact or amend it every single time an RSA change. They would just state the date of the, obviously the date of the effective date is already going to be on the bill or the ordinance or the bylaw. So it would only be to say the RSA in section at the time of enactment would be required, and then future changes to the RSA would not be relevant to the bylaw or ordinance unless the power was completely repealed. But thank you for the question.
Okay, Representative Maggiore, you have a second question?
No, I apologize. I just didn't lower my hand.
Representative Tripp, you have a comment or question?
I believe Representative Guthrie had his hand up before me, so I'll.
No, go ahead, there's no worry.
Go ahead, please.
Well, I learned something today from Representative Treleaven. Anyhow, thank you for taking my question. Listening to all this, I have this sense of wonderment in that why shouldn't the town, this is for Mr. Cordell, why shouldn't the town know what is permitted by RSAs when they write new ordinances?
If you're asking why they shouldn't know what is permitted, I think they should know. As I said in response to Representative Treleaven, I think it is a very good idea for them to ask themselves every time, what statute enables this? What statute authorizes us to do this? And I think they should. I think it is a good idea to cite the statute when you adopt an ordinance, but the making the failure to do so result in the invalidity of the ordinance is just, I see it as a formula for disaster. And I guess I make the analogy, does the state legislature, every time it passes a law, does it cite the provision of the New Hampshire Constitution that authorizes it to do so? And if it were required to do so and didn't, what kind of mess would that create? I think it's a pretty good analogy. So if the state isn't going to require that for the state legislature, I don't think it should require it for cities and towns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Guthrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question is, I think, from the sponsor, Representative Viola. And it's pretty much a question that's been asked maybe 3 or 4 times by other people. But I always, when I look at a bill like this, I ask, what's driving it? What's the reason for it? And I'd suggest to you ask you, do you have any instances where selectmen or town councils or city councils are behaving in this manner? I'd suggest, from my experience, that these kind of boards making these kind of laws do, in fact, do what you're asking. And I think the question is well taken, that they should be asking the question whether or not they have the authority. But I'd suggest to you that that's being done, and ask if you have any instances where this is not the case, and as that's what's driving the bill.
That's a question.
Thank you.
Bill.
Thank you for the question. In my introductory testimony, I suggested a couple of instances where people might be confused as to where the power for the municipality came from. One of those was the raising of smoking age by a municipality, and another is limiting speech in a particular area of town. And so I think that those are definitely something that the state and legislatures would want to consider as it's not clear from the face of it where those powers came from. So thank you for the question.
I have a follow-up.
Yes, follow-up?
Yeah, but my question is, do you have any instances of where councils, boards or committees actually don't go through that exercise? My experience is if you have a situation where it's not clear that whether or not you have the authority, that you do go into the RSAs, and if that's necessary, you even go to your town council. This implies that the boards, committees, and councils within the state of New Hampshire are not paying attention to what the rules and regulations are as far as their relationship between the state and the town. And I'll be honest with you, as a longtime selectman and on many boards, I actually resent the fact that the implication is that we do not do due diligence when we make our laws and ordinance at the local level.
Thank you for the follow-up. If you're asking which specific ordinances do not list a RSA currently, I'm happy to find a few examples for you. There's going to be a long list if I tried to find all of them, but I definitely agree that some or most, if not all, of the selectmen and town councils, et cetera, or city councils are trying to stay within the bounds of the law and the powers granted to them by the legislature. The question is whether or not it is clear to both the legislature and the residents of that municipality that they did so. And I believe that just referencing the RSA that they did look up and or did get advised by council that it was enabling them to make this bylaw or ordinance. Just notating that in the ordinance and bylaw is not an undue burden. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Representative Gilman, you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I did. I muted myself and didn't get a chance to ask you for permission. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. So I'd like to follow up my previous question with the Representative Biocella because I feel it wasn't really answered. A town or city or municipality has a book of policies and ordinances, and they reference, for good practice, references the particular RSA that those issues come under. When, I'm looking at a book here of changes to RSAs and repealing RSAs. When that happens, I understand that a town may or should, a good practice, review their RSAs, their policies and et cetera annually. But I don't find that happens. So my question is, whose job is it going to be to look at all the changes in RSAs? Who's going to tell a municipality that these RSAs have changed and you must review all of your work to be sure you follow them. So I find that this makes work and I want to know who's going to pay for it, who's going to take care of it.
Thank you for the question. I disagree that it will create work. If the proposed amendment that I referenced in the answer to your first question was enacted, if an RSA changed, it would not necessarily have any effect on the bylaw or ordinance if an amendment to this legislation was proposed to that effect and adopted. And so it would only come into play that anyone at the town would need to know if the power was completely repealed, and therefore they wouldn't be able to have such an ordinance and bylaw. That would be the only reason I am suggesting that they would need to know at the town level. I'm suggesting that I draft an amendment to address your concerns of additional work at the local level. So thank you for the question.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Representative Yokella, for presenting this bill. I'm looking for some clarification on a particular point. And my question is, if this bill becomes law and if a municipality fails to cite the RSA, or if there's an error in citation, does this in fact legally invalidate the ordinance? Or is that the case if and only if it is challenged in the courts? And if it does in fact legally invalidate the cited ordinance, could somebody provide me with the RSA that provides for that? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I do believe that it would need to be first challenged in court. And during that process, obviously it would be lengthy. The selectmen or town or city council would be able to enact an amendment during that time frame and reference the RSA in the meantime and address the issue before any action by the courts invalidated a particular ordinance. So thank you for the question.
Representative Yokella, I have a question for you. We saw this bill or a very similar bill last year with substantially the same content. I know that we had some issues in the committee with perhaps flowing down an unfunded mandate, given the fact that there was thought to be some considerable costs associated with, especially those towns who had, I'll give you a visual, multiple 3-ring binders full of ordinances, if you were thinking in a non-digital mode, that it would have to go through. But I know we're talking about enabling and going forward and so forth. But still, the thought would be there would be certainly some cost associated with doing that research and publishing that information in either book of ordinances or on the website of ordinance. How do you tackle that question about flowing down an unfunded mandate?
Thank you for the question. Yes, I did submit a substantially similar bill in the previous session. However, it would have required going back and amending all the previous bylaws and ordinances, and not just the ones that are being enacted or amended. And so I believe that the new bylaws enacted or amended are already having this review done. And so it wouldn't create an increased cost, and it wouldn't be an unfunded mandate in that sense, because they're already doing that currently. It would just be the additional, one sentence or something like that on a piece of paper. It wouldn't be any work that wasn't already being done. If I did agree last time that making city councils and towns go back and review all of the bylaws and mandates previously enacted, that could be seen as an unfunded mandate. And so that is why I amended the proposal to this bill as you see before you today. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee for the sponsor or for anything? Seeing none, thank you very much, gentlemen, and we're going to recess the hearing on 262. Okay, our last business of the day, and I think this, when we're done with this, I think we can take the afternoon off. Because we will have accepted all the bills that were still open for that purpose. And we're going to look at chapter 9. That's the constitutional amendment, number 9, that had to do with limiting tax increases. I think it was 2% for all citizens and 1% for people who are disabled and seniors. Representative Majid-Rudy, you had your hand up?
I just wanted to go back to 262. If you could kindly tell me the blue sheet, I would appreciate it.
Yes. We had 4 in support and 3 opposed.
Thank you.
Representative Porter?
Mr. Chair, maybe I'm losing it today. Are we not hearing HB 284 this morning?
We are. We're going to be hearing that next. That'll be actually the last piece of it.
And that hearing was at 10:30?
Right, we're a little behind schedule.
Are we doing that now then, or are we doing an executive session on CACR 4?
What's the preference of the council? It doesn't really make much difference to me. We can do either one. If you'd like to do 284 first, that's fine with me. Do you have any, the council have the committee have a preference?
Is there somebody
Yes.
waiting to testify?
Do we have people waiting to testify?
Representative Majority, do we have people waiting to testify at 284?
We do. Mr. Cordell Johnson from the NHMA is the one person listed on our list, and he is available.
So, understanding that, if you have someone that's waiting, we'll take 284 first so that we don't have them on the line sitting waiting. Representative Porter?
Is Representative McBeath here to introduce her bill?
No.
No.
However, 284.
I will be glad to introduce it if need be.
Representative Porter, you have a comment?
Yes, I said I'll be glad to introduce the bill if need be.
Let's see. We'll pass on the schedule. Representative Majority, if we don't have anyone else.
I do not. Yeah, I do not see the prime sponsor for 284. Again, only Cordell Johnson, who is available.
Bill 284 extends the deadline for requests for restoration of lots that were involuntarily merged, moves it out 2 years. Representative Porter, would you like to add anything to that?
No, Mr. Chair, I was just going to introduce the bill so that we could hear it, but it looks like you've just done it, so I guess I don't need to. Thank you.
All right, are there any questions? If there's not really anyone's question, I can tell you I can't really answer any questions. I don't know if Representative Porter can. But if anyone has any questions about this, I really don't want to entertain discussion prior to accepting it. But we do have Cordell Johnson. Cordell, would you like to offer any testimony?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and committee members. I did send a letter to the committee about this bill yesterday. And as I said in my letter, this is a very complicated subject. And if I were to try to go through it here, it would probably take me 10 minutes, which I suspect you don't want to listen to. And my explanation would probably confuse more than clarify. However, I think my letter is pretty clear. So what I'm going to do is encourage committee members to read the letter that I emailed yesterday or last night, maybe. We do oppose the bill. Basically, our position is there has been a period during which property owners have been able to request that their previously merged lots be unmerged. That period has been open for 10 years. It will expire at the end of 2021. It's already been extended once, and we don't think that it needs to be extended again. So our position is that the bill should be found inexpedient to legislate.
Given that testimony, I will resist the temptation to accept this very short bill today and ask committee members to make sure you make yourself aware of the submitted letter and read it, and we will accept it in our next session on March 1st. Any questions for Cordell before we terminate the testimony on this particular bill? Seeing none, I'm going to close the hearing on House Bill 284 as presented. Again, I'd like to ask you to make sure you read the.
I had a
Mr.
question.
Chair, you have several hands up.
I see one hand up, Representative Pimentel.
And then Representative Power had her real hand up a moment ago.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Mr. Johnston. The description says that this bill requests the restoration of lots that are involuntarily merged. I understand people will merge lots, but it's more on a voluntary, they want to do it because they want to lower their taxes. But could you explain to me what an involuntarily merged lot is?
I can. This was a very long explanation that I was trying to spare you. And it is in my letter, which I realize you probably didn't get because you're not a regular member of the committee. But I'll summarize it as briefly as I can. It arises when a town adopts a zoning ordinance, and typically it includes, for example, minimum lot sizes in the ordinance. So if your town adopts an ordinance with a 1 acre minimum lot size, and you have an existing lot that's half an acre, that is now a non-conforming lot and it can't be developed unless the town includes what's called a grandfather clause in its ordinance, which allows for the development of pre-existing lots. And most towns do have a grandfather clause that allows for the development of pre-existing lots. But if you have several non-conforming lots that are adjacent to each other, many town zoning ordinances will treat and they're substandard lots. Many town ordinances will treat those as to be automatically merged so as to result in one lot that does conform, rather than several substandard lots. And so the issue is, if I have 3 substandard lots that were automatically merged when the ordinance was adopted, there was this enactment 10 years ago that allowed me to go to the town and essentially unmerge those lots. And that the restoration of those merged lots, now creating several substandard lots again, creates significant concerns. But when this statute was enacted back in 2011, it gave people at first a 5-year period during which they could go to the town and request that their lots be restored. That period was extended for an additional 5 years, and now this bill requests that it be extended for 2 more years. And our position is it's been extended long enough. Property owners have had enough time to do this, and the bill is unnecessary.
Okay. Representative Powell, you got a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So my understanding is that a municipality may involuntarily merge lots for the purposes of zoning, assessing, or taxation. And furthermore, it's my understanding that this is the majority of such an action is done for purposes of taxation and billing, to, I guess, change the tax map to make it administratively more easy for the municipality to bill the landowner. So my question is if this bill were ITL'd, how would a landowner know that additionally, municipalities do not have to notice the landowner that their land was involuntarily merged? That's my understanding. So the question is if this is ITL'd, or, and if this provision to request the unmerging is done away with, what recourse does a landowner have at this point to have this addressed without expending money to have a licensed land surveyor take care of this? Do you understand the question?
I think so. And what I forgot to mention when I was responding to Representative Pimentel is that before the legislature in 2011 gave property owners the right to unmerge their lots, the year before that, it passed a law that prohibited any future involuntary mergers. So since 2010, no municipality has been allowed to effect an involuntary merger of lots. So the problem should be going away, or it has been going away over the last 11 years. So I think that takes care of the problem going forward, and property owners who had their lots involuntarily merged have had this period of time to have it undone.
Yes, follow up?
Yes, follow up.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, thank you. So my follow-up is, I was just curious to know, was there any provision that municipalities would then notice any landowners that their land had been involuntarily merged, in light of the fact that since 2010, my understanding is that no municipality can involuntarily merge? That was a detail that I was not aware of. So my concern is, my concern is for people that just might not be informed, and then therefore this opportunity to unmerge their land just goes away.
Yeah, and there was a notice provision in the statute in 2011. It wasn't, individual notice to every property owner, because it actually be possible for a town to necessarily know every property that had been involuntarily merged. But there was a requirement, and towns did follow this, that for a 5-year period beginning in 2011, they had to post a notice in a public place, which typically was done at the town hall or city hall, notifying people of their right to have their lots unmerged. And they had to include the same notice in their annual report every year through 2016. And again, I think there was pretty good compliance with that.
Cordell, this is Representative Dole. I had a question for you, and that is, as I read this, the current law is the restoration of involuntarily merged lots is on the books, and so this bill is not challenging whether lots should be merged either voluntarily or involuntarily. That's currently law as we see it. The only thing that this bill does is just change the date for effectivity from 2021 to 2023. Is that a correct reading of what's before us?
Yes, that's correct. This merely changes the deadline for people to request that their lots be unmerged and have the legal right to have that happen.
So next question is, if the committee or a citizen wants to challenge whether or not we should be involuntarily merging lots, that would be a different LSR that would be created, correct?
Again, since 2010, there has been a prohibition on any further involuntary merger of lots. So going forward, it can't happen.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Representative Municipal. We need to unmute Representative.
I'm guessing that towns, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm guessing towns want this just to put this this whole matter to bed. But the question to you, Cordell, is, Mr. Johnston, wouldn't I know that my property was merged just by looking at my tax bill that I look at every year before paying it?
I would think so, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other further questions for Mr. Johnston? Seeing none, I'm going to end the testimony on House Bill 284. Okay, and we'll take that up in executive session on, I believe, on March 1st. All right, the last matter of the day, I want to move into executive session on the constitutional amendment, Catherine number 9. You remember that was the constitutional amendment that, in quick summary, was to put a tax increase limit of 2% on everybody in a particular town and 1% on those disabled and seniors. If that helps remind everybody of the bill we're looking at. So Catherine 9. Look to Representative Diamante to make a motion.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I make a motion, CACR 9 ought to pass.
A motion made by Representative Diamante. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Representative Tripp. There's a discussion on the committee. Yes, Representative Fleet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some concerns about this bill. And I understand that the sponsor brought it through in good faith, and I do understand the issue we have with our seniors and disabled residents and so on. But we do have exemptions that we work for them. And I went back and I looked at all the exemptions that Nashua has and so on. And we have the elderly, we have the disabled, we have blind, we have deaf, education specialties and so on, as well as the veterans. Doing this for seniors, limiting them to the 1%, beyond looking at the 2%, without a means test means that someone literally could have $1 million home, $1 million income, and $1 million assets on top of the home, and their taxes would be reduced. I would think that the person who brought this forward was not thinking about that particular situation. So that's one of my main concerns. Overall, I do have concerns of the way that the tax rate is set. It's set by the DRA. The city does or the town does their budget. And as we all know, that's the process. Then based on their need, the DRA will set the rate. I'm confused as how this will happen. If the DRA says, well, your rate will go up, say 4% or 3.5%, does the city then have to go and redo their budget? Because it's also relative to the assessed value of the homes and so on. So I'm just a little confused by, I know what the intent is. I'm confused as to how this would actually happen with the DRA and et cetera. And for that reason, I really have to oppose this. I do understand the want to keep our taxes down, our real estate taxes down, but as long as the state, and I know, you know, this is a moment of controversy, and I'm trying not to be partisan or bring up any of the uglies, but the state does downshift cost. The retirement cost has now been changed. The education cost is coming down. And I can tell you that we're looking at $11 million downshift in Nashua for this year. This will kill us. And then on top of it, if you're limited to 2% and 1%, I think there are going to be a lot of municipalities that are going to fall within this. So those are my comments, and thank you for letting me be heard.
Thank you. Representative Manshipudi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Being a newbie on this committee, this is creating a lot of confusion in my mind. When I served on the school board in Nashua, you know, we rely on property tax revenue to fund our education, and, you know, taking away the ability for the municipalities or limiting their ability to juggle their revenue and expenditures. I feel like we are tying the hands of the local, you know, we, on one hand, we want the local control in management, and at the same time, you know, it's contradicting, you know, I'm sitting through these public hearings and it's contradicting in so many ways. So, but also looking at, I got a lot more phone calls and emails regarding this, which, you know, my constituents also sent it. 40 opposed and 4 support on the blue sheet. And so, you know, looking at just purely from the democratic process, I feel that, you know, I agree we have to support the most vulnerable. I am with them. You know, I understand, but we also have to keep the well-being of our community. And I think this limits that ability. And that's it. That's my biggest concern, downshifting and tying the hands at the same time.
Thank you. Representative Porter, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 points to make. One is a little bit of a history lesson. I always hesitate to support constitutional amendments for this reason. Back in the 1880s, the legislature met from January to June one time in a 2-year session. And at that time, you could buy a nice piece of property for $100. In that time, it was decided by the good people of New Hampshire that they should pay their legislators $200 for a 2-year session. And that passed because obviously they thought it was a good salary for the time for the legislators. And now here we are in 2021, being paid $200 for a 2-year job that's pretty much from January to June, sometimes then starting up again in August and going through January again and then starting all over again, is a full-time job. And the constitutional amendment that was passed then subsequently had unintended consequences of making it very difficult for someone who is a working person trying to support a family to become a legislator and also have an income to support their family. And it, consequently, we have a lot of elderly people who can serve. We might have some self-employed people who can serve, but the people who represent that whole group of people between the ages of 20 and 55 are very small. I think that was an unintended consequence, and it's hard to get rid of. I feel the same way about this constitutional amendment that limits the increase in property taxes to 2% a year. If it's in the Constitution, we don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. We don't know what the economy will be. We don't know how the state will be doing. We don't know what the state's needs are going to be. We don't know what the town's needs are going to be. And if we are tied by the Constitution, it's going to be very difficult to meet the needs, possibly. And my second disagreement with this constitutional amendment is that towns and cities are already able to set a tax cap in their community if they so choose. Some of them have. It's working maybe for them or not working for them, but I firmly believe that this committee should not enact legislation that affects every town and city in the state where it might not be wanted or needed in those towns and cities. It makes it universal. Everybody has to do it. It's a mandate. And I think given all the reasons everyone else has given about property taxes, and God bless, mine have gone up again this year, and they've gone up 20% in the last 5 years on my house. I understand. I'm one of those old people who chooses between medicine and property taxes sometimes. But that being said, this is a bad idea, in my opinion. Let the people in the communities decide for themselves. Don't make the mandate that they have to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Fielding, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to agree that as it is now, towns are allowed to adopt an elderly exemption, but there has to be a means test so that we don't get the, as Representative Klee, I don't want to repeat everything that she said, but I agree with everything that she said. And if I'm understanding this bill correctly, the 2% cap is on the actual tax bill, not on the rate. And what that means is your revenue is flat, and it's potential and probably likelihood that a municipality's bond rating is going to go down because they can't.
We have you froze in the Zoom. Well, Representative Fieldman, if we can unfreeze you, we'll come back to you. So in the meantime, I'll move to Representative Pimentel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some of the points I wanted to make have already been made, the most egregious being the fact that right now we allow towns to have exemptions, but this is a mandate. And if if the town can't afford it, then they're really in trouble. The other thing I don't like about this is that a lot of towns, especially poorer towns, form their budgets on what they need for that year. And those towns' budgets are more likely to have to fluctuate from year to year by more than 2% because of a big expense that they have for that year. If we do this, if we pass this constitutional amendment, these towns will be forced to not pay with cash these big expenses, but they will be forced to bond everything in order to maintain that below 2% margin. And we're going to put towns further and further in debt. Thank you.
Thank you. It looks like all our electrons are back moving again, so I'm going to go back to Representative Gilman and let her finish her point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I made the end of my point right at the appropriate time, or maybe not appropriate, but time I needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Representative Trelevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fascinating discussion, and oftentimes I don't remember what bringers of bills or people offering testimony say to us specifically. This one I do remember, and I remember very clearly Representative Roy saying to us that this was a way to start a conversation about taxes. Well, I don't think this is a way to start a conversation about taxes. I think this is a way to start a conversation about one slice of what we do in New Hampshire in regards to taxes and paying for what we want. And I think a better bill would be a bill that is a grown-up bill and talks about an income tax. That's my favored tax, versus more property taxes. Because as Representative Porter said in her little history lesson, you know, in the 1880s, if you owned land, you were wealthy, you had money, you could do what you wanted. If you didn't own land, that wasn't the case. Well, now it's a flip side of that story, and it's changed over the centuries. And we need to face up to the fact that we need revenue to run a state. We want to have nice things. We need to stop having nice things on the backs of property owners. And we need to start having nice things by sharing the burden. I think a constitutional amendment needs to be very, 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 very well thought out and careful. Because once you've got it, you own it for a long time. And this is not a good constitutional amendment, in my opinion. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. We have one more comment coming from Representative Piemonte.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking the question. On this bill, I think that Representative Porter hit it the nail on the head. She said and I think that's a good way to start. I just don't think that we'll have debates on this in the House if it passes out of committee. And you know, then if it passed out of committee, the paid citizens of New Hampshire would decide for this, and that's the basis for what I think is going on. So,
thank you. I thought that was it, but the Representative Ventura, you're welcome to opt in.
Unmute yourself.
If you're at the controls and you can't unmute, we're having trouble.
You need to unmute yourself there, Jim.
There we go. What I was trying to say, thank you, and I apologize, is that I don't mean to have the last word, but if I put my hand up as the co-host, it sends me to the front of the line, and I don't want to jump ahead of people. But my concern here, I will say I agree with Representative Klee and everything that she said, certainly with the downshifting and with no means testing. But I also reflect on the fact that, like many of the other 234 towns in New Hampshire, my town has a capital improvements committee that has a 10-year plan for our routine active maintenance and our replacement of vehicles, of buildings, of projects. As I stated or asked the question of a representative, the sponsor of this bill, we also have collective bargaining agreements. And I have to wonder where if we have a 2% cap, if a town like mine and many others that takes that active role in trying to manage expenses so that we are sensitive to every one of our taxpayers, if I'm suddenly going to have to say, no, we can't do the ambulance this year, and we can't do the road paving this year. And I'm sorry, collective bargaining, I still think that that's going to create a problem with collective bargaining. If I walk into a meeting and say, guys, I'm right up against a 2% cap, so, you ain't getting anything this year. I think that runs a risk of a grievance because we wouldn't be able to bargain in good faith. So for those reasons, I can't support this the CACR, although the discussion is fine. I just can't support this bill. But thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. In the LOB here, we have Representative Tripp. Comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've heard twice today comments that, the lemonade stand bill, people saying that this should be left up to the towns, not to be governed by the state. I heard another comment that tax cap should be local. Decision should not be a state mandate. And then I also heard a comment that why don't we have an income tax? And I'm wondering, would that be a local thing too? Or is this be something that would be a state driven idea? I think that we have different viewpoints on what should be a state law and what should be a local decision. I don't believe that I know that the what's being discussed now isn't income tax, but I suspect that should the point ever come around to wanting to talk about an income tax, it wouldn't be a local decision; it'd be a state decision. And if we can't make decisions on lemonade stands or tax caps, then I'd certainly be against making a decision on an income tax. Thank you.
Okay, are there any further questions or comments when we go into voting mode? Seeing none, ask the clerk. I'm sorry, we have a motion and a second to OTP. Just as a reminder, because we've had a lot of discussion. It's a good time. Clerk, can I call the roll?
Okay, OTP CA9. Representative Martin?
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp?
Yes.
Representative Guthrie?
Yes.
Representative Gonzalez?
Yes.
Representative McBride? Representative McBride?
He's gone.
Right, we still see him logged in here.
Oh, yes.
Okay, we'll come back to him.
I've asked him to unmute.
Representative McBride?
Can't see him.
We'll come back.
There he is.
I'm listening to a meeting. I'm a state rep, so I'm at the meeting. I'm here, but I'm there, but I'm working. Zoom is a great thing. I don't know what they're doing. Hold on.
Representative McBride, we're in voting. Chapter 9.
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, you.
Excuse me, if he was not here when we called the question, he can't
I'm
vote.
sitting right here. I've been watching the whole thing. I've been watching the whole thing.
We couldn't see you, Representative.
You need to be able to see when you vote. So the question is to you, are you in favor or against Chapter 9?
I'm a yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
I just had the volume off, that's all.
Representative Melvin,
Yes.
Representative Ayer,
Yes.
Representative Power,
Yes.
Representative Porter,
No, no.
Um,
11.
Mr. Chair, I must protest. I'm sorry. It was very clear when we were given instructions in regards to attending via Zoom that if we were not seen, our faces were not showing when a vote was being taken or when a vote was being called, then we could not vote. And I'm sorry, Representative McBride was not visible to us. I'm glad he had his computer on. I'm sorry he had his volume off, but I protest. I suggest you speak with the House Clerk and get a ruling. I'm very, very upset.
Thank you.
It was very clear in our directions how we were to be able to participate remotely. If I was out of the room and you called my name and I didn't hear you, my vote wouldn't count because I wasn't there and you couldn't see me.
Okay.
I protest.
We're in the voting
We need to
mode.
stop.
I think we need to end the discussion at this point. Continue.
Pardon me?
Roll. We're in the voting mode, so I want to continue with the roll.
I vote no.
Thank you. Representative Gilman,
First, I agree with Representative Trelevin, and my vote is no.
Representative Majority,
No.
Representative Gilman,
Do you say Gilman?
What
did you say?
Hold on, please.
We should have gone to Pimentel, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you call my name? I didn't hear it.
Yes, sir. Representative Pimentel, your vote, please.
Yes, I also protest and my vote is no.
Thank you. Representative McCooley,
My vote is no, and I protest.
Representative Fan,
I protest because Representative McBride clearly did not know what we were discussing, and my vote is no.
Representative Clee,
I echo my colleagues' comments about the protest. He did not know he was even speaking to another. He was on another meeting, and I vote no.
thank you. Representative Gallagher,
I vote no.
and Chairman Dolan.
I vote yes. At this point, I'm going to defer to my colleagues who have an objection. I'm not going to count Representative McBride's vote because it's in question. In that case, what's the current vote?
It's a tie, 9-9. Chair,
Yes,
I'd like to make a motion to reconsider.
motion is to reconsider by Representative Piemonte. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Representative Melvin. A vote on reconsideration, Chapter 9. Call the roll.
Representative Piemonte,
Yes.
Representative Tripp,
Yes.
Representative Guthrie,
Yes.
Representative Salas,
Yes.
Representative McBride,
Yes.
Representative Melvin.
Yes.
Representative Ayer, Yes.
Representative Power,
Yes.
Representative Porter,
No.
Representative Trilliver,
No.
Representative Gilbert,
No.
Representative Majority,
No.
Representative Mitchell,
No.
Representative Magafuni,
No.
Representative Van,
No.
Representative Cleave,
No.
Representative Gallagher,
No.
Chairman Noel.
Yes.
Motion passes 10-9.
So it passed to reconsider. So is there a motion? Yes.
I'd like to make a motion on to pass on CACR 9.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. And let me say at this point, that as we just observed, it's very important to stay, when we're in the voting mode, stay visual so that we can see who's voting. I will make sure that if someone goes off camera, that the vote's not counted as just happened. So please stay visual, and because we need to see who's voting, and that is a rule that was appropriately, the vote was appropriately challenged and discarded during the first vote. We now have a second vote.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
Wouldn't this be similar to if I was in the room, LOB room, and left while we were in the voting mode or just the discussion, left the room, I cannot come back until that, and then would that be an opportunity where it would be reconsidered, the vote? It's the same thing, right? I'm participating virtually. So if I leave the room and I come back and I lost my chance to vote, so will I get the same privilege of being reconsidered to vote my conscience?
If a motion is made by a committee member and the motion is in order, then the answer to your question is yes. There are certain times when reconsideration is in order and certain times when it's not in order. If you, an example when a motion.
I don't have any extra samples.
You see your email?
I don't have any extra samples.
I forward to you.
Please make sure you guys are on mute.
Extra samples of what? I don't have any. There's only 29 samples.
All members, please.
Yeah, let me finish this and I'll come check with you. But there's only 20. Yeah,
Mr. Chair,
there's only 20.
I again protest. I believe that Representative McBride is at work. I don't know how he has the privilege of being at work while we're all here. So here's my second protest of the day. Nothing personal, Representative McBride, yet now we're hearing your business conversations. And I am so upset at how this has been handled.
Okay, so the reminder is that if you're not recognized to speak, you should be on mute to avoid those embarrassing situations. All right, so we are now in a position to, we've got a motion to okay to proceed in a second. And ask the clerk to call the roll.
Yes. Clerk votes yes. Representative Tripp?
Yes.
Representative Guthrie?
Yes.
Representative Thomas?
Yes.
McBride?
Yes.
Representative Melvin?
Yes.
Representative Villa?
Yes.
Power?
Yes.
Representative Porter?
No.
Representative Schiller?
No.
Representative Gilman?
No.
Representative Majority?
No.
Representative Pimentel,
No.
Representative Mangaputi,
No.
Representative Van,
No.
Representative Clee,
No.
Representative Gallagher,
No.
and Chairman Hill.
Yes.
10 to 9.
Okay, chapter 9 is supported 10 to 9. We have a volunteer to write the minority report.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
there will be a minority report. I'm not sure who will be writing it.
Okay, please, whoever wants to write it, have it emailed to me for approval.
Yes.
And the majority report. Representative Piamonte with the majority report. Okay, pretty much done with our business. We don't have any further bills to accept this afternoon, so hopefully the jury know for you. I see a lot of scowls, but Representative Porter, you had a comment?
I guess I'm just really out of it today. On my list, I see HB 67 relative to warrant articles in efficient ballot town, school district, or village district meetings as a bill we were going to exec today. Did we already exec that bill? Have I lost my mind?
67 is not ready to exec. We understand there is an amendment coming forward with Representative 60, with HB 67, so we're not ready to exec it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you might want to check with Mr. Clerk, Paul Smith. My understanding is if it's listed as a bill that's going to be exec at a certain time and date, if that changes, it needs to be noticed. So people who come to hear the executive session will know that it's not going to happen. Might not be such an issue that we have remote meetings now, but sometimes people drive long distances to get to an executive session. Just, you might want to check. I might be wrong on this again, but you might want to check that.
Senator Mangaputi, did you have additional comment?
Yes, I just want to, if we are going to get some clarification, I would really like to get the clarification about voting in the committee from Clerk Paul Smith about leaving the room, coming back virtual or in reality. I would really like that clarification. Thank you.
Well, you all should know that I disallowed the vote from representative who we lost contact with visually, and then the bill was reconsidered. So that first vote was disallowed.
I understand, Mr. Chair, but how do I put it? Would that be a consideration extended to every member, because I'm new to this committee and just serving in my 5th term and doing 2 roles? I just want a clarification. That's all.
If a committee member is missing or is unavailable to vote at a particular time, then their vote cannot be counted. That's the rule. But if a particular bill is reconsidered, then you start over. And then the same rules apply under the reconsideration. And any bill still in committee can be reconsidered by a motion from a member of the committee. The bill has to be still in our possession. Once the bill has been transmitted to the clerk of court, it may not be reconsidered at the committee. And that's the difference between whether a motion to reconsider is in order or out of order.
So when will I know that these bills that we exacted has left the committee? So do I have to think about all the bills that we exacted in the last 3 committee meetings, and I still work, think about, okay, some of them could be reconsidered and the decision reversed based on the day it was reconsidered, or is there a limit on which?
There's no limited time frame. If you want to find out if a bill has been forwarded to the clerk, then contact with our clerk. He's the one that puts together the folder and sends it forward. And he can tell you whether the bill has been forwarded to the clerk or is still in possession of the committee. Representative Van, you had a question?
I had a similar question. I was wondering how we know at what point a bill has left our hands, because I always foolishly assumed that once we had exec'd a bill, that it had left our hands and there was no pulling it back. But clearly I was misinformed. So I guess the answer is I can ask the clerk whether a bill has been received in the clerk's office to find out whether we have actually given over control of it.
Right. It's a little different this year because of the fact that the clerks that support us are all basically remote. So when the file folders are ready to be sent, they don't normally go right away. In previous years, they were handed off to the committee assistant, and the committee assistant then would do a quality control check on the folder to make sure all the different pieces of paper are complete, and then send it over to the clerk. Nowadays, we're doing a lot of remote digital documentation that has to be printed out and populated in the folder, and the folder has to be at some point picked up from the LOB and transmitted over to the clerk. And copies of that have to go to the assistant. Since many of the clerks are, in fact, virtually, I believe all of the clerks are remote, then when we leave a folder in the LOB to be transmitted, it's not like it was in the past, just handed to the clerk assistant and move forward. It's left to be picked up and then viewed and then distributed. So it's a little longer time period. For example, in Chapter 9, we had not accepted that particular bill. So that's the first time you think that Chapter 9 had already been accepted. It had been waiting for grant to accept it. That was the one. The other one to be reconsidered that we had already accepted. That's a little different, and those are still in our possession. In fact, most everything is still in our possession because in many cases we were waiting for committee reports for both the minority and the majority. I think we cleared most of that up, but until those are done, we're not transmitting the file forward to the clerk. That's a piece of the file that has to be populated before it can be transmitted.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess, and then don't go away. We're going to come right back to answer your questions. I know Representative Porter and Benji already have questions, so please bear with me. We're going to take a quick 5-minute recess.
The education bill has been retained.
Really?
Yeah. Voted 20-0 this morning to retain it. 20.
So Representative Dolan and I did mute the room, so someone will have to unmute it.
Yes, we're not gonna blame, we're not gonna.
We can't hear you, Mr. Chairman.
Is someone able to unmute the computer by the TV?
Christina, is that's the one coming up executive session on, there it is. Okay.
Yes, that's the one.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect. The clicks. Perfect. I see it.
Yep.
You're unmuted now. Do you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Okay, thank you. All right, Representative Porter. We need to ask you to unmute and then go forward. Please go
I'm
right.
unmuted. Mr. Chair, I was wondering if you could tell me if HB 586, the governor's housing bill, is likely to be reconsidered at another session, because I have an interview with the press in about 15 minutes, and I want to make sure that I'm not giving inaccurate information to the public.
What I can tell you is I've had no input from anybody on the committee that they wish to reconsider 586, but that's not to say that that couldn't happen in the future.
Is that an early bill, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, that's an early bill that's already been transmitted to the clerk.
Okay, so it's out of our hands now?
Yes, it is.
So no reconsideration motion can be made in this committee on that bill?
That passed OCP by a vote of 15-3.
Yes.
There'll be no reconsideration on that.
Thank you.
To reconsider would not be in order.
Thank you.
Representative Magic Moody, you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, for taking my question or a comment. Today's executive session is really kind of put me in a very confused state. Like I said, this is my 5th term. I've served on criminal justice, state and federal and Veterans Affairs, and this is my 3rd committee that I'm serving. And so from today's proceeds, I am really left very confused. If I attend and participate in an executive session, like I did today, and I've done in the last 3, and for whatever reason, I cannot participate in the next committee meeting, whatever my vote was considered, that bill can be reconsidered, and that could change. So how am I representing my constituents? And I did my due diligence, and that being overturned, I feel that that is not the intent of this democratic process. I take my responsibility of representing my constituents and serving. This is my prime duty, I take it. And so I feel like it's being undermined. I would really like to get a clarification from a clerk of the House. And I understand we are in a pandemic. I appreciate the fact that I can do it virtually and safely, so I can stay alive to participate and do my due diligence and service. So this is very disturbing to me. If I could kindly ask for a clarification I would truly appreciate that.
Okay, I
This kind of thing has never happened in the last 4 terms. That's what I'm trying to say. And so this is.
answer your question. You can rely on me if you'd like to get a clarification for you, but if, or you can go directly to the clerk or to your minority leadership to pursue the question. So you have a variety of sources to get that information. What would you like to see happen?
I would defer to my minority leadership, and I think I can ask for clarification. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess that at this point, Representative Porter, the ball's in your court to get clarification unless you want me to do it on your behalf.
Okay,
I will do my best to answer, to get Representative Mangiaputi's questions
in the right way, Representative Porter. What has been the past practice in this committee? Thank you.
Okay, I know Clerk Smith well enough to know that you will refer to Mason's rules in your prompt answer. Any other questions or concerns? Seeing our next meeting is
Mr. Chair, Minority Leader was had her hand up, physical hand up.
Okay. Yes, I wanted to just ask while you're checking things with the clerk. This morning, we had a request for one of our committee members to address us prior to the public session. And I think that's permissible, but I'm not sure if we are all together as a committee, whether that constitutes having a quorum. And my understanding of the right to know law is that if a quorum is present, it becomes a public meeting. So I just don't want anyone to get into any kind of right to know issue if we are together as a committee, although not yet open to the public, if statements can be made off the record, so to speak. I don't know. So you might want to check that. Maybe Christina Dyer knows that answer, or maybe Clerk Smith knows that answer.
I will take that out.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just reminded that we do have house sessions scheduled next week, 24th and 25th. The Bedford complex, I think you've been notified of that. Our next meeting will be on 3/1, Monday, the 1st of March. And I'm currently looking at trying to get our next meeting scheduled, and I'll notify you as soon as I get that, so you can overlay that on your personal calendars so that you have enough notice to get ready for that. Representative Porter, you have another question, or just putting your hand up from?
Still here. We need to talk, maybe you and me, about who's going to do defenses and speeches on the floor and that sort of thing. So we can talk later.
Thank you. That's a good reminder. We do need to make sure that leadership on both sides knows who's going to be arguing and doing the TIs for the bills that are not up to that. Okay, so I think we have the luxury, if you will, of getting the afternoon off. Looks like we may end up with a deteriorating weather situation. Again, welcome again for winter. Please be safe. See you. I look forward to seeing you, many of you in person on the 1st. And after that, I'm sorry, next Wednesday and Thursday at the Bedford Sports Complex. I look forward to seeing you in person. And after that, on March 1st. So thank you very much for your attendance and going through the sausage making today. And we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, did I hear that after the next House meeting, we are going to be meeting in person? Would this option be taken out?
The next time we'll be on, the committee will be on March 1st. And I don't have any indication that the blended meeting would not be authorized. I'm anticipating it will still be doing Zoom meetings at that point.
That option is still on the table, right? It hasn't been pulled under the rug. I mean.
Meetings and banquet are.
Thank you. Just wanting to be safe.
Okay.
Maybe
Thank you for the question.
didn't want to be.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Safe trip. Are we done that, Chairman?
We're done.
Have a good trip next March.